All right, so let's transition to your
Yeah.
writing. We've talked about it a bunch, but let's take a dip in. So you need to make a drink. Let's make this drink.
Let's make this drink not quite as strong as the first one. Which again is the nice thing about a Dan drink.
Very good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you make that drink, and then let's take a dip into your writing here.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And then whatever you want to read from,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
perfectly happy.
Forgot about that.
Yeah.
So I thought about reading from all of these. I decided I'm just gonna read from the most recent book that came out, you know. And so this is so TA NUPA is a big switch from the people that I think it's kind of a challenge. I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but like in this book, in this series, this trilogy, a lot of the people that really loved it because it's coming from a matriarchy, right? So a lot of women readers were like really into the idea of these are strong female leads, strong female characters. My intent was to write about a society and a religion and a culture that was attractive to me, but expose it to the same kind of scrutiny that I would anybody as a journalist, right? To look at it, right? But it obviously, if that's what you loved, this one is a big change, because this is about, you know, patriarchal cultures with problems, and it's not quite as romantic in that sense. But
Sure.
I'm actually quite pleased with it, if only because this is more like a traditional novel than the other one, which is it's not a bad thing. It's just what it is. So, all right, this is from the first chapter. For most of the non-earning residents at Sidon's famous Rose and Iris brothel, mornings ran on a tight sunrise schedule. Wake up, bedpans, privy, lavatory. Back upstairs for grooming and dressing. Back downstairs to drop off laundry and catch breakfast. It was the only kind of morning Gid Marish had ever known, and he loved it. Mrs. Braxton, the kitchen supervisor, waited in the cobbled alley by the entrance to the dining hall to give each a visual inspection. For those who passed got breakfast. Those who didn't had mere minutes to fix themselves and try again. Once that door closed, it stayed shut until lunchtime. After that, the diners went their separate ways. For Gid and the other children of the brothel's prostitutes, that meant school, taught on the upper floors of the converted bare brick warehouse that covered the backside of the block. For the cleaning and laundry staff, it meant the start of the working day. And for the rest, bookkeepers, distillers, brewers, daytime kitchen staff, whores on medical leave, and all the outfit's various underworld apprentices, it meant heading off in multiple directions. Gid got a special kick out of being better at the Rose and Iris's morning routine than anyone else in the dormitory. Not that there were any prizes, because who cares about prizes? In the world created by Neva Marish, the only way of keeping score was money, and Madame Neva offered no financial rewards for early morning efficiency. But everyone in the dorm knew it. 14-year-old Gid was always the first to reach the dining hall for inspection, with an appearance so reliably sharp that he no longer had to pause at the door. Being first meant his cup of kava would be steaming hot, with no shortage of cream in the pitcher. There were other perks, of course, but the best bit was choosing his favorite seat at the back corner of the back corner table, with a view of everyone coming and going, and no blind spots to defend. He'd learned that from Madame Neva too. What Gil didn't know, as he hustled downstairs to breakfast on that chilly early winter morning, was that Neva's personal assistant, Demi, would be waiting for him next to the kitchen supervisor in the alley. He was about to learn quite a few things from the madam. "Come sit by me, boy," Neva Marish said when he arrived at her third floor private sitting room overlooking Exchange Street. "Ariane and Offler, sit tight. The rest of you, out." Gid watched as Demi, Devon, Tedman, and Ubart filed by without acknowledging him. "Am I in trouble?" Teenager asked as soon as Demi closed the door, leaving him alone in the dimly lit, exotically perfumed parlor with the madam, her fixer, and the R&I's top earner, Gid's mother, Ariane. "Don't worry," Neva said. smiling at him as she patted the black fringed velvet cushion next to her on the couch. You're not in trouble. We have serious business this morning. Gid did as she indicated, but searched Doreen's face for clues. She was upset and trying to wear her brave face. The three of you were just in a closed-door meeting with my instructor supervisor, the R&I's legit Geraldic lawyer, and our chief of security, Gid said, gesturing towards the door. I think I'm going to worry until proven wrong. Thank you very much. You're too clever for your own good sometimes, boy, Never replied, her voice unusually weary. But then you're just starting your day. We've been up all night, which means I'm too tired for our usual spar and parry, so here goes. An unusual visitor presented me an unusual opportunity last night, and you're here because we've all agreed it should be offered to you. Gid, I want you to pack your trunk for Dutan. You're going to be an aristocrat. You're kidding. Not kidding. Ariane, am I kidding? Not kidding, Gid's mother said. But I don't, he began. Explain it to him, Hoffler, she said. Yes, ma'am, the waterfront wise guy said, then turned his attention to the teenager. Gid, you're a dukehead just like the madam and your mother. What do you know about the way things work out there on the Dewtown plains? What? The Asada. The Asadas, Hoffler said, waving his stubbed out cigar around in the air like a foul-smelling magic wand. Wide open spaces, cows and horses and whatnot roaming around, chewing up grass as high as your head. You know about that? A bit. Good. So the Ducads call these big cow farms Hasadas, and every Hasada is run by something called a blessed family. It's a church thing, see, and words, Neva said, rubbing her eyes with the heels of her palms. Get on with it. Right, Hoffler said. Ducad tradition says that every Hasada boss must provide at least 3 sons. Son number 1 gets to take the boss's place when he dies. Son number 2 goes to be a priest in that Ducad church of theirs. And son number 3, well, that's where you come in. Come in where? There's been a fever going around the plains this fall, and the 3rd son at this place called Hasada Hrabar just dropped dead from it, Hoffler said. A tragedy, of course, but the wife in this Hrabar family only ever had 3 sons, hence the opportunity. There's nobody legit waiting in line to move up and take this dead son's place in the number 3 slot, hence the boss's bastards come into play. I'm not a bastard, Gid interjected. You all know who my father was. He was a good earner, God rest his soul, Hoffler replied. But here's the nut, Gid. Madam Neva wants you to pretend to be this rich cattle boss's little bastard and go take his place out there. And I, for one, think it's a very great idea. Gid turned to Ariane, who offered him a hopeful smile. I'm not going to sugarcoat this for you, kid, Neva said, reclaiming his attention. There's risk involved. I grew up outside one of these Hasadas, and the Ducad's Azulade aristocrats can be some dangerously twitchy people. It wouldn't surprise me if the wife or her kids, or more likely some combination of both, tried to have you killed. And this is a great opportunity for me because you're a friend of Roseanne Irish, Neva said, her eyes instantly bright as she invoked the waterfront slang for a member of her brothel's underground network. From the day you could walk and talk, we've trained you to read people, study situations, and take quick, profitable risks. You'll be joining a family of pumped up, inbred Ducad big shots, son. I'm betting you'll spot all sorts of opportunities to turn things to your advantage. Get this one right, Gid, Hoffler said, and there's no telling how far a boy with your talents might rise. So basically, in this, if you've read the first trilogy, you understand that there are things that are left behind by this, by previous civilizations that are mysterious and kind of, and they're psychic, right? That they basically are in, I'll just say this, that basically the ultimate technology of a previous civilization was that it basically learned the physics of consciousness. And once you do that, you're able to do all sorts of things. You enhance it, apply it, expand it. And they did. And in a way, it wound up being the thing that destroyed them.
Sure.
The people who come after them and are trying to piece that together, they don't have that information. but as a reader, you start to pick it up, right? So you
Right.
understood from the first trilogy that there are places that you can go that enhance your psychic abilities.
Sure.
In this case, in this story, there's one very special one, and this guy is going to wind up there, and it changes him. Now he has an ongoing role in the series, in that he is essentially, he winds up being aligned with what I originally thought of as being the bad guys in the series. Although he's a ostensibly good person, he's just in a situation like a lot of us are. And this story is about the reason I wanted to do this trilogy is that if you only have the prequel trilogy, you understand the Highland culture of the matriarchy, right? But you don't understand the other cultures on this continent in anywhere in any similar detail. And I felt like I really needed that. And this, in this case, this is a culture that's very restrictive, very patriarchal, really messed up. And
Sure.
from my perspective, but I wanted to treat it with the same kind of understanding and respect that I gave to the thing that was more reflective of what I actually think about. And so
Sure.
in this trilogy, the point of view passes from one character per book, who's the POV character, to another, each in a different culture, so that you get more of a specific idea of what's happening right on the eve of an invasion.
Sure.
And
What?
yeah.
So when you're writing that, right? Like, so at the point of view, you have the so much things going on just in general, right? Like there's a whole world here you're
Yeah.
juggling. Man, what compels you to write that? Like, what compels you to like get back to the typewriter every day? Is it just the story? Is it something more? Like, what drives you as a writer?
I want to tell the truth as I understand it, and I don't want to filter it based on fear,
Sure.
right?
We're all about truth here.
Well, like as I say, I believe but cannot prove, right? I don't know I don't know that I have any truth, right? I'm wide open to the possibility that no matter how I've tried to filter it and structure it, that I'm a fool and I've missed the boat. But
Sure.
if you think that you want to write a book and it's about something more than just pure entertainment, which I think a good book should be both,
Right.
you better believe it, right? If you don't have to, I don't have to agree with everybody in this series that has a point of view. I just have to understand it and try to embody it.
Sure.
Which, I mean, to me, that was the frustration of a journalism career, is that you are so hamstrung in your perspective in terms of what you can and cannot say. And what gets published is just like that 10/90 iceberg rule, right? It's 10% of the acceptable truth. And the interesting
Right.
stuff, the really meaningful stuff, is not in those stories, because that's you, right? That's you
Mm-hmm.
interacting with that subject. And if
Or
you're
I mean,
going,
that's Rose and was it Jack? Like Jack is floating to the bottom after they hit the iceberg. Like it's only the story that Rose gets to tell at the end because
that's right.
she got the door to like be saved upon.
And I'll also say that what inspires me to do this is that, you know, in 2004, when I was just over 2004, 2005, when I was just back to doing science coverage, right, for the first time, right, back to being a full-time reporter. I looked at the global warming thing, the global warming story as it was being done, and thought, well, basically it's just competing narratives. Can I do something? Can I do a kind of journalism in which there is no narrative structure, right? Where I'm not telling a story in the traditional way. Can I have the science section for one day, one week, where I'm going to just lay out the pros and cons of the arguments for and against the legitimacy of global warming, with none of the liberal media bias, none of the narrative bias that goes with this stuff. Can we examine the arguments, right? And man, that was a challenge, right? And I was very proud of what I put together, and I couldn't wait to see the response. There was no response. There was no response. There was no response at all, because this is part of my education. I think I think that our operating system, to the extent that we have one, is traditional narrative story structure.
Sure.
I think that's how we store information and retrieve it. I think that's why mnemonics work the way they do. I think that is why story and emotion and reaction, all that stuff is so powerful, and facts just kind of fall to the wayside. If you can't communicate those things as a story, you don't reach people. And the irony, and the bitter irony for me with that experience, was that the same people who were saying, just give me the facts, I want my own research, right? Just give me the facts. Don't put your liberal spin on it. I gave them that. It didn't produce the outcome that they wanted. And they didn't care. It just didn't matter. So this idea that we can make journalism better without having stories in it, without having these things, you can't have it, right? You don't want it. You're just lying.
Sure.
And
well, there's
that
a lot of,
I realized we were doomed. This is going to happen, right? And I've kind of had this, it was a very depressing moment to realize that there's nothing I can do as a journalist to change we're going to have something really bad happen before we do anything, because that's just the way we are. And it's so depressing that I wanted to write about a future that had somehow, there was still a future after this, right? Things collapsed, civilizations collapsed, things came back and in different ways, and new civilizations rose and fell for different reasons. It's that long view of history in a way that we just don't have, because we are the apex. By all the evidence that we have, we are the apex civilization so far.
But the beautiful thing about what you wrote, and like just the concept behind it, is that there's stories like that since the beginning of time.
Yes.
Right. There's Plato talking about Atlantis.
Yeah.
Like there's there's lots of archaeological evidence.
So in the book that I'm writing now, it's about archaeologists in this world. Right? Because you can imagine if you had all that stuff, archaeology would be a thing, right? Sure. And I'm not going to go into it. I loved writing about archaeology. And after I got out of the business, I actually went and paid money to be a volunteer on this dig that I'd written about a few times. And it's an amazing thing, right? To do that. And I won't go into it. But the thing that was interesting about it was that what people were finding back then, there was a lot of question about where, because there's all what we were finding back in the 2010s was that this idea that people had to walk across from Siberia across an ice-free corridor was
Bering Straits.
Yeah, it was nonsense. It doesn't explain the facts on the ground. But because narrative and orthodoxy matters so much in academia, they could not let go of that idea. And we kept finding all this evidence that was saying otherwise.
Well, it matters to us as people, right? Like we love stories, we love a narrative. So we fall into it, and narrative, like academia, everyone just feeds it to us, and you just go, oh wait, oh shit, what's happening? Like Egypt is a fucking mystery. Like we talk about, I remember when I was growing up, the thought that the Sphinx was showed signs of water erosion. That was controversial at the time.
Yeah.
And now they go, and I remember there was a geologist that went, no, these craters, everything, this is water erosion. And now people go, oh shit, yeah, that is water erosion. Like the Sphinx was there way before. Like this is thousands of years older when this was still jungle.
So in 2013, when I was on this dig, I wound up sitting around with this guy who had worked for the Smithsonian, and he's a heretic. I think he was wrong about his primary theory, but the thing that he was showing is what is now, at the time, was crazy talk and is now universally accepted. Prior to the work that was done in places like the Topper site in South Carolina, which found evidence of people being here more than 20,000 years ago, which is 7,000 or 8,000 years before the previous barrier, right? The horizon, the Clovis horizon. Back then, we looked at water and thought, well, those were barriers to cavemen. And now we look at it and we realize that water was to them as it is to us. It's a highway. It's the best way of moving rapidly and without a lot of energy from one place to another. Once you get that, right, you see the ancient world in an entirely different way. And here's the thing. The place that archaeology suggests was the most active and populated area was the rim of the Mediterranean during the Ice Age. Because even at the peak of the Ice Age, the glaciers didn't come there. And in that boundary between land and water was where all the food was. So when we talk about Atlantis, not making judgments about Atlantis, it's very clear that if there was a coastal Mediterranean civilization during the peak of the Ice Age, it's underwater.
Right.
And we find some things that would indicate that, but not enough to say it's proof. But as a novelist, you can take that and you can say, yeah.
Right. Yeah, you can play with that.
About a past, there was a civilization that was earlier and it got wiped out because sea level changed.
Right.
And we're repeating that.
Right. And we are.
I love that long view.
Yeah. Yeah. Atlantis is I encourage everyone. Atlantis is such a fascinating story. Like we turned that into myth. We turned the city of Troy into myth. City of Troy has been found, right? Like so much of what's biblical, all of this, we have to break out of our conceit. Like we're conceited. We think we know everything. We don't. There's so much to prehistory. It's so fascinating. Research it a little. Like there's so much. Like it's amazing.
And this is why I love the rational side of things. As much as I admire people who really can do that intuitive thing with full heart and soul, right? I can't. But what science is showing us now is basically is almost magic. I mean, like there's this new thing called eDNA. I don't know, or eRNA or anyway. It's environmental genetic material that you can collect and you can kind of figure out what was there. And of course it deteriorates in most places, but the Washington Post has had a story about how in this very dry place in Greenland, they found enough of it to reconstruct exactly what was in that environment. That's astounding. That's magic.
Right? And, that's magic. It is. Yeah. It's amazing. So getting back to the writing for a minute here, because I don't want to be remiss. I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to I think they've gotten a great chance, but gets a chance to get to know you as a writer. To you, and I'm going to put some caveats here.
Okay.
Everyone can write for different reasons.
Yes.
Blah blah blah. Right. But for you, what is the role of the writer? Why do you write? Why should someone write? What's the whole purpose of having narrative that we're leaving behind or we're sharing with the greater world here?
So I would like to try to live in a world that doesn't have a lot of shoulds and oughts. I still do. But having said that, as a caveat, I'm actually going to go back to something we were talking about earlier. The people who really, they hate books. They don't like writers. And just in the past month, we've had two kind of high profile newsmakers come out and talk about how much they hate books. One was Kanye West, talking about how, you know, he doesn't respect books at all, that, you know, for whatever reason, who cares? And then the other one being that guy that just got arrested, the cryptocurrency trade guy. He's
Right.
kind of a celebrity. He's like a celebrity to do bro dudes and stuff, but you know,
Mhm.
I have no interest in him, right?
Right.
I'm shocked that, you know, a guy that, you know, is peddling make-believe money is a fraud, right?
Right. Right.
He said,
Mystery money.
right. He says something very, very different, you know, very, very similar. He said, you know, I don't respect books, you know, but it should have been a blog post, you know, it should have been a 6-paragraph blog post, right? And I realized in reading both, I guess it was the second one where I kind of got it, right? It's a separate kind of, this is a different kind of culture war. This is about, we don't need you. This is about how we are modern and XYZ, and we have no need for the things of the past.
We know everything in 2 paragraphs that it took you
Right.
200,000 words.
I promise that you don't, right? And
Right.
so the last regular job that I had was doing communications and marketing for the professional soccer club in Charleston, South Carolina. And I'm a huge soccer fan, right? I love it. And the way I got that job was I started covering them for a website covering local soccer that I just started because I thought we needed one.
Sure.
So they hired me, and we had it was a great thing. The club was in decline, the attendance was down, and in 1 year we turned that all around and we broke the all-time attendance record.
There you go.
Significantly. I mean, like it was huge, right? It was like everything changed, and it was just using and what made the difference was just understanding how you tell the story about this team, right? Instead of trying to sell it, instead of trying to do all these things, show people why it's so fulfilling to be a fan of a local soccer club. And once they got that, they showed up. It made it so hip and so cool that a 30-something tech bro who had just made his money by selling some garbage came in, bought it, laid off everybody, including me, and ran it straight into the ground. And the end of that story is that this was the oldest club in continuous operation in the United States. It was the oldest stadium of its kind, soccer specific stadium in the United States. He tore it down. He sold it off in pieces and he tore it down, and it's all gone. All that history, all of it. And it was entirely apparent that this was going to happen from the beginning, because this was somebody, and his people were people. The people he wanted to surround himself with. We don't need to know anything about the past. We're the supermen. We understand technology. We understand marketing. We understand finance. You guys are a bunch of losers. Well, this is death. This is death for so many good things. And I'm its enemy. I'm proud to be the enemy of people like that guy and Kanye West and that dude with the cryptocurrency exchange. And you know, you guys have been coming after us as a country, as a culture, as just common decency now for far too long. And I'm an old guy, turned 60 next year, and fuck it, I'm gonna fight you. And if I can do that, I can do that by writing stuff that offends you just because I do it. That's not enough reason for me to do it, but it's a nice bonus.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I think about that all the time. Like, because I'm like, you got popular and you made money. And in America, we think that means you matter.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. Actually, there's so many examples that you don't matter, Kanye. Sorry, buddy. You don't. Like, you're like, I don't have to like kowtow to that. None of us do.
No.
But we've gotten into the stage where we think we do.
Well,
And I'm
people,
like, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, look at what's happening with, and I'm sorry to monopolize. I just get excited. But if you look at what's happening with Elon Musk now, essentially, and the Post had a good piece on this today, that essentially Trumpism no longer needs Trump, and
Right.
there
It
so
isn't.
the QAnon people are now turning to Elon Musk as their new hero.
Right.
And I'm like, I didn't know that. Why am I in no way surprised by that? Because
Right.
it's all part of the same theater of absurdity.
Exactly.
This
Well,
idea.
and that's why when I was talking about pirates and I mentioned the Trumpocalypse, it has nothing to do with Trump. Because it doesn't, like, Trump was just a figurehead. Like, Trump's not what matters. It was all the people that made Trump matter. And that's what happens. Kanye doesn't matter. Like, he's a footnote in history. Like, Kanye doesn't matter. Like, it's absurd. Like, he's mildly talented musician, right?
But we create these sort of we're just going around replicating in pop culture
Right.
a lot of things that are just copies of other things in different colors and different packaging.
Right.
And
Yep.
and that's fine. It's not fine. I shouldn't say that. It's understandable, and it's predictable, and it's what a lot of people want. And you
Right.
know what? That's okay for people to have things that they like, so long as they're not harming other people. The problem is, at this point, you are harming other people.
Right.
It is not. It's not a neutral. Well, I just like this.
It's, you have to realize at some point,
fact and reason and and just basic common decency,
Yeah.
because it's good marketing.
right?
I don't think it's
Yeah,
sustainable.
there's this is just, oh, I just do this. It's fun. I don't care,
No,
like,
it's just a joke. It's just a joke. Oh, can't you take a
exactly.
joke? Let me tell you.
Right.
Let me tell you what I can take.
And then there's, but you're actually affecting society. So at some point, you actually have to take account for what you do.
right.
Right.
And they're not going to unless we make them. And we have to.
Right.
It is, if we want, I got 4 kids, one of whom is married this year, and they want to have kids.
Sure.
That's a really scary thought to me. I really like the idea that they'll have children because they're wonderful people. They'd be great parents.
Sure.
Think about the optimism you have to have right now to say, I'm gonna make that choice.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Well, it's sad that, so there's 2 things I find sad. And being a dad and a granddad, this is gonna sound strange. I find it sad that this generation has less sex. Right? Like, because you're full of hormones, right? Like, I've been there. You've been there. Like, it's sad that they're full of hormones and are so depressed that they're not fulfilling that hormone need. And then there's the world's not that bad. Like, at some point, you just have to realize, like, the world's always been bad. We've always suffered.
Yeah.
But the existential dread that people feel, God, it's fucking depressing. Like, you just realize, like, God, it's depressing that you live in this ivy tower and you don't even realize it. Like, you think like you're being bombed in Ukraine right now,
Yeah.
but you're just in suburbia somewhere, and you feel a terror that's actually in some ways worse. Like, when your life's actually endangered, at least you understand it's endangered. When you're sitting around and your life's not endangered, but you think it is, like, you're taking on the danger of all the lives in the world.
That's a
That's a
mistake.
terrible
right?
place.
You got to figure. So I'll put it this way. In terms of my own life, right? I'm not scared of dying.
Sure.
I'm at peace with it, right? I hope that's true when it actually comes. That would be nice, right? I changed my mind.
Right.
That would be great. But in terms of thinking about, raising a child, right? This has never really happened before in human history. In that we have enough information that is factual information that we can understand that there are 3 converging crises that are all coming together at one time. And we might be able to deal with any one of them if it was just coming, right? Just that one thing. But instead, it's all coming at once at a point when there are more people alive than have ever been alive in history. And the odds are that we will bungle it. And in that bungling, that there will be, it's just hard to predict what the outcomes of that will be, but we can say that it will be disruption. And I think that that's the difficulty that I face as an adult, of trying to be realistic about what humanity is capable of at this point in its development, but also having some kind of hope. And so for me, writing this series of books is about that problem, right? It's like, what is unique to our time and what is universal, right? Because we're still people, we're doing things that people do, but the circumstances are very much what tend to shape societies. I want to write about that now because I don't want my kids to give up.
Right.
I don't want your kids to give up.
Right. And there's no reason to give up. Because why? Hey, there's nuclear bombs dropping tomorrow. Why give up? Like you have until that last moment. And you fight until that last moment. Like it's just because that's what we have. We have this life, right? You have your time here. And that's what I always try to ground myself with is that this is what I have.
What are you going to do with this time? You get this time. And we were talking before about death, and because the book I'm writing right now is called City of the Dead. It's about people who on an archaeological dig are basically confronted with an ancient technology that broke, and it's causing them to have psychic problems, right? It's psychic pollution, essentially. And it's made me really, one of the reasons it's been so difficult is I don't know exactly what I think about what happens after we die. I know a lot of wise and smart people, and I listen to them and I trust them, but I don't know. And I don't want to lie to anybody. So it has to be something that I can really endorse. And I think I finally kind of gotten there in the last month, and I'm moving forward again. But a friend of mine described it this way, and I think he's got it. That if you may have heard this before, it's not original, but if you look at the ocean, a wave is a tangible thing. You can measure it. It moves. It has volume and mass and velocity and vector and all that stuff. Describe it. And then it's gone. It existed. It was an individual thing, but it receded and it became part of the one again. And the thing that I'm trying to explore and explain and just kind of make it part of people's thinking is that our thoughts about life and afterlife are very individualistic and hermetically sealed, right? This ego that I have from this life experience, I want it to have meaning and continue, right? I don't want to disappear. But I think what we do when we die is that we return to the one, where it's not, where there really isn't any difference between you and me. We're like waves. And that, for me, that is a challenging concept because, I have an ego and I part of me wants to be special. But I feel, I think the mystics who have said that are onto something. And I think that is, and it really jives so well with what we're learning from the studies of two things: the near-death experiences, and then the childhood accounts of reincarnation of past lives. A guy at the University of Virginia has been studying for 20 years now, and it's a remarkable piece of work. Really indicates to me that's the basic template of our consciousness and existence. And what a fun thing to try to turn into a story, right?
Right, exactly. So the last thing I like to ask everyone that we bring on here is, I don't know that a life hack is always the correct term, but what is one thing you can impart upon our audience here?
I really thought about this, right? What could I say? And I came up with this, right? So on one level, being a city editor is like middle management anywhere. You have to do all the things that middle management, right? But basically those people are just like making you show up on time, making the schedule, and, supervising the, policies, and then making sure that you're actually working, right? You do all that, but then you have to make all these, but your product that you're making is really just a work schedule, right? Because the paper comes out on the same schedule, but it's never the same thing.
Right.
So every day you're making all kinds of consequential decisions, one after another. And I had like 37 people that were reporting to me. And so every day I was making a shit ton of decisions. And I developed this thing, and I told it to my wife one time when she was struggling with something. She says, "That's really smart. You should write that down." She calls it the 3 questions. And the 3 questions are, number 1, what's the actual problem? Because a lot of times what we're really talking about is just a fucked up situation, right? And the thing that you're trying to solve, if you just address that situation, it's not going to solve it, right? That's not the problem. That's the outgrowth. What is the actual problem? And if you ask that question, you're going to piss off a lot of people because it's so fucking annoying to have to think about what's the actual problem that we're trying to solve here. But if you do that, it has a tendency to like maybe go away instead of just keep coming back. The second one is what can still be done? Because a lot of the things that people use when they're brainstorming of how to solve a problem is like pie in the sky, well, hey, what we could do? We could get a special vehicle, and then we could, no, right? What is the relevant time for solving this problem? And when you do that, you shut down the kind of monkey brain thing or the kind of group dynamic where it just devolves into all kinds of pointless arguments. You're solving a problem. The third thing is, what are the limits of my solution? Because every brilliant solution contains the seed of its own absurdity if you take it to extremes. And when I look at modern pop culture and cancel and this and that, the arguments, culture war arguments, a lot of these are just about good ideas taken to absurd lengths by people who didn't come up with those ideas, but are now expressing them in ways that suit them, yada, yada, yada. And now we're having to argue about that and defend or criticize. You know what? It's just a good idea taken a little bit too far by people who, maybe just
mean well, but
background, right? You just don't know. But what I've found is, this is like the basis to a lot of my well-being and happiness is that I feel like I have this way of sort of processing complicated things and getting to a good outcome. And the other thing, if I hadn't thought of that, it was plant radishes in the spring and fall. Because if you plant, because I'm a gardener, and the thing that I found is a lot of greens take a long time to like green up and be something that you can eat. But if you plant radishes in the spring and fall, and you do it, if you do it kind of, you space them out, you can have greens for months very quickly. And you also get radishes. So that if you have any questions about radishes, let me know. I'm mostly a tomato, but I grow a lot of radishes.
Right. Yeah, we'll have everyone. We'll put your contact information on the show, and they can contact you about the radishes. So,
all right,
awesome.
Are we good?
We are good. Thanks so much, Dan, for coming on.
This was so much. Yeah, it was great. It was great to do this, and I would have been fun in an actual bar, and I really wanted to, but dude, there was like this guy there that it was just like he was driving me nuts. Couldn't get away from him fast enough, right? He
Right.
kept sitting next to me. God.
Yeah, next time. I want to like actually my goal is with this show at some point is to do some like in person like bar sittings. So,
Hey, that'd be great.
it was lovely talking to you. Right? We didn't get to spend much time together in Buford, so fun to
I had my eye
catch
on
up
you,
now.
but it just didn't work out. And I kind of had to run away. So anyway, buddy, take care and we'll be in touch. All right.
Yeah, very well.
All
Have a
right.
good night.
You too.